Welcome to the lesson on piecewise functions. These are functions made up of different parts or pieces of other functions. Let's take a closer look at what can happen with a piecewise function. We know that when we read the graph of a function on a coordinate plane, our eyes move left to right. And you can see that this function is made up of different parts and pieces. As we read left to right, our function can be increasing. Please take down these notes, draw that arrow. It can be decreasing, or our function can stay the same. And part B, our function can be linear, meaning it forms a straight path of points, it forms a line, or it can be nonlinear or curved. So as we go through our function, we're going to determine A, if it's increasing, decreasing, or staying the same from left to right, and B, if it's linear or nonlinear. Let's take a look starting at -6 to -3. That is the interval we're going to study first. As we move from left to right, we see that our function is a straight path and it's increasing. So we would call this linear and increasing. As we move from -3 to -1, we can see that our function is decreasing, and if it's curved, it would be considered non-linear. From -1 to +3, we can see our function is decreasing and it's back to being linear. And then for our final interval, from 3 to 6, we can see it's curved or nonlinear and increasing. At the bottom of this worksheet, you need to complete the description for each interval. For example, for our first interval from -6 to -3, you would write increasing and since it's a straight path, you would also call it linear. You must describe the piece in that interval by choosing something from A and a description from B. Pause the video and complete this on your own. When you're done completing 1 through 4, turn the video back on and we'll work on the next function together. Please pause the video now. Now let's take a look at questions 5 through 8. We are given the function at the right. Remember, we have to determine if it's increasing, decreasing, or staying the same. And secondly, whether it's linear or nonlinear. So let's start at the interval from 5 to -2, from here to here. We can see, starting at -5, it decreases and curves, so it's non-linear. Remember, non-linear means not a line. Let's check out the next section of the function. From -2 to +1. You can see it's increasing and it's a straight path. So we would describe that as increasing, and linear. Let's check out the next section from 1 to 3. Here you can clearly tell from the number 1 to the number 3, this is staying the same. And it's linear. It forms a line. So we would call that stays the same and linear. And finally, the last section of the function. From 3 to positive 6. It increases and it's straight. So we would call that increasing and linear. Make sure you get all the answers written down for questions 5, 6, 7, and 8. Pause the video if you need some time. Let's move on to the next problem when you're ready. Pause the video now if needed. For questions 9, 10, and 11, we're going to do the same thing. Let's look at the interval from -5 to -2. You can see it's straight and it increases as we move our eyes from left to right. So you would call this increasing and linear. Let's check out the next section. From -2 to 0, from here to here, we can see that our function is straight and linear. It really stays the same. So we would write stays the same and linear. Finally, let's take a look at the section from 0 to 2. From an x of 0 to a 2. We can see it's straight and decreasing in that interval. So you would say that that piece is decreasing and linear. Finally, although we're not asked to figure it out, take a look at this last section right here from left to right. It increases, and because it's curved, we would call it nonlinear. Pause the video if you need time to take down these notes, and when you're ready, turn the video back on and we'll look at the next page together. Let's take a look at question number 1 in the multiple choice section. It states, the graph of a function is shown below. You can see it has 4 different sections. Which statement is true about a section of the graph? Well, first let's take a look. We're linear and increasing from 0 to 3. In section P, from 3 to 6, we're definitely increasing and linear. In section Q, we are linear, but we stay the same in that section. It's level. And finally, in section R, we're linear and we increase again. Now let's read about each of the sections. In section N, the function is linear and decreasing. Well, that's false. Put an F there. In section P, the purple section, is it linear and increasing? Well, actually, if you look at the purple section P, it is linear, a straight path, and it is increasing. So that's actually true. But let's check our other options. C states section Q is nonlinear and decreasing. Well, that's false because it's definitely a line in section Q. And then section R, the pink section, They state it's nonlinear and increasing. Well, that's not true. It is linear. It forms a line. So the correct answer is B. Let's take a look at the next question. In number 2, it says the graph of the function is shown below. Which interval is the function decreasing and nonlinear, which means it's curved? Well, decreasing, it has to go down, and to be nonlinear, there has to be some sort of curve involved, perhaps like that, or perhaps like that. Let's take a look and move your eyes from left to right. Here, it goes up in the first section. In the next section, it curves downward. This is curved and decreasing. In the next section, it is nonlinear, increasing. And in the final section, it's linear and decreasing. So clearly, between -2 and 0, we have a decreasing nonlinear function. So the answer here, B. Turn the page and look at the next question. Which function has the following properties? It must increase and be linear between -5 and -3. Secondly, it remains constant or the same between -3 and 0. Thirdly, it's decreasing and linear between 0 and 3. And lastly, it is increasing and linear between 3 and 5. Well, let's work through each one of these. In the first section, from -5 to 3, we have to look for increasing and linear. Well, this is increasing linear. So is this. So is this. And so is this. So they all meet that standard. Let's move on to the second standard. From -3 to 0, it must remain steady and constant. In other words, stay the same. Well, this stays the same. So does this. And so does this. But letter B is nonlinear and decreasing, so it's out. Let's check the next one. From 0 to 3, it has to be decreasing and linear, a straight line. Well, this decreases and this decreases. However, letter C increases, so it cannot be letter C. And finally, the last condition. From 3 to 5, we're looking for increasing or going up, but nonlinear, meaning some type of curve. Well, if you look at letter D, this is increasing and curved. If you look at letter A, this fails. It's increasing, but it's linear. So clearly, choice D is correct. Now let's move on to the final page. On the final page, it says a function is shown on the coordinate plane. Which statement correctly describes the function on the given interval? So, for letter A, is the function decreasing and nonlinear between -7 and 4? So from here to here. Well, remember, our eyes move left to right as we go that way. And this function is increasing and nonlinear, not decreasing. So letter A is incorrect. Let's check the next one. For letter B, is it increasing and linear between -4 and 1? Well, here's -4 and here's +1. As you go from left to right, that stays the same. So that can't be true. It's not increasing. It is linear, but not increasing. Letter C. It states the function is increasing and linear between 1 and 4. So here's 1, here's 4. Well, it is increasing, but it's definitely not linear, so that's not the case. Finally, letter D. Is it decreasing and nonlinear between 4 and 11? Here's 4 and here's 11. And remember, our eyes move left to right. So, moving left to right, it is curved or nonlinear and decreasing. This is the statement that is true. Now let's look at our final piece. For our last problem, we're given a function graphed on the coordinate plane. Over which intervals is the function increasing? Make sure you're cutting the question like I'm cutting the question, and take down the notes I have. Remember, our eyes move left to right like we read. So as you read this, starting here, it is definitely increasing from -4 to -2. The next section decreases, but from 0 here to +2, it increases again. And then lastly, from 2 to 4, it decreases. So select the correct answer, A, B, C, or D, knowing that it increases from -4 to -2, from here up to here. And we know it also increases from 0 to +2, from here to here. Now choose A, B, C, or D, depending on which you feel is correct. Pause the video, make a choice, and turn the video back on to check your answer. Pause it now. You should have chosen letter B. This concludes the video on piecewise functions.